Well, hey there, ABC. First of all, before I say anything else, I just want to say thank you all so much for the way that you loved me on my birthday yesterday. It really meant a lot to me to just have everybody reach out and say happy birthday and encourage me and had a number of people write cards and that kind of stuff, write emails, and so you all are really, really kind, and I absolutely love this church so much. So thank you all for just the ways that you thought of me. And I changed to a new decade yesterday, so whatever that means, I don't really know, but anyway, just Alliance Bible Church, thank you for that. So today we are doing a sermon deep dive, and I actually just want to take each day of this week to look at each day of Jesus's Holy Week. So yesterday we looked at his triumphal entry into Jerusalem, and today we're going to be looking at the actions of Jesus on Monday of Holy Week. So what are those actions? Well, there are two specifically that I want to look at. There were a few more, but I want to look at two of them. Two actions that Jesus took are he wept over Jerusalem and he cleansed the temple. And both of these apply and give us an idea of how God feels when people use him for their own ends, for their own purposes. So Luke chapter 19, verses 41 through 44, it talks about Jesus weeping over Jerusalem, and this is what it says. It says, "When he drew near and saw the city, he wept over it, saying, 'Would that you, even you, had known on this day the things that make for peace. But now they are hidden from your eyes. For the days will come upon you when your enemies will set up a barricade around you and surround you and hem you in on every side and tear you down to the ground, you and your children within you. And they will not leave one stone upon another in you because you did not know the time of your visitation.'" This is what Jesus is saying. He's like standing up on a mountain over Jerusalem. He's looking down on Jerusalem on this Monday after he's had this triumphal entry into Jerusalem. He has extended peace by riding in on a donkey, and he looks at Jerusalem and he weeps because he recognizes something about them. He recognizes that they have missed their Messiah, that they have not actually recognized him for who he is. They see all of this, and then Jesus, he looks at not only that, he looks at the religious system that they've built. He looks at how these Jews have kind of built the system where they use God to meet their own purposes. They use God to meet their own ends. They're not actually interested in submitting to God as a king or as a lord. They only follow God for what he is able to do for them. And that is made even more clear in the fact that one of his next actions, one of the next things that he does is he goes in and he cleanses the temple. So Matthew 21:13 talks about this. This is what it says. He said to them, Jesus goes in. He's driving them out. He has a whip in his hands. He's driving out these money changers that are in the temple. And this is what he says. He said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a robber's den." So these money changers in the temple, there was this place in the temple that was called the court of the Gentiles. This was the place where all the Gentiles could go. The Jews could go further in, but the Gentiles had to be on the outside. And what would also happen in the court of the Gentiles is that this is the place where money changers would exist. And they would sit here because you have people coming from all over different countries, and they're Jewish people, but they're coming from different places with different currencies. They need a place to change out their currency to be able to make sacrifices and this kind of stuff, and to be able to get their money in the right thing. And so these money changers, they would charge a fee for an extra fee to be able to change out the money. And on top of that, all this is happening in the court of the Gentiles. And this is the place where other nations, people from other nations, people who are not Jewish, they're supposed to be able to come here and pray to God. They're supposed to be able to come here and worship God. But instead what's happening is you have all of this hustle and bustle with the money changers. And that quote, "My house is to be a house of prayer." Actually, if you go back to the Old Testament, it's a house of prayer for all nations. So this place that is supposed to exist as a house of prayer for all the nations are supposed to come here and be able to worship God and pray to him. It's now turned into this place where money is being changed and people are making a profit off of it. And so Jesus is infuriated about this, because what people have done is they've taken the religious system and they've turned it into a tool for their own ends. They're using God for their own purposes. So even when Jesus rode in on a donkey, even when he came in offering peace, he found that the religious system was built to use God and other people for human ends instead of simply seeking to submit God and seek his way. So Jesus wept. He wept over people who he had pursued over and over again. These people who are more interested in using God than submitting to God. And then Jesus got angry. Jesus drove the money changers out of the temple. So when people decided to reject God or to use some image of him for their own ends, this apparently appears to affect God and God's heart at an emotional level. So, if that's the reality, Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey offering peace to a people who refused to recognize the ways in which they were waging war against God. And I want to issue a call to you today, a call to all of us today. Because this is something that God is so emotional about, it should actually cause us to stop and ask ourselves a question. Is it possible that I might be using God as a tool rather than choosing to submit to him as a king? You know what? This is how we're wired as human beings. Like, this is what we choose to do. We chose to follow our own way instead of God's way. This is why Jesus ultimately came to die. But the heart of Jesus on this Monday of Holy Week is to call us to repentance if we see these things in ourselves, and then to bend the knee in complete submission to our King Jesus. And so, Alliance Bible Church, I want to issue that call to you today. I want to issue a call to examine yourself, examine your heart. Is it possible that you might be using a tool? Is it possible that I might be using God as a tool for my own ends rather than submitting to him as king? He would issue the call to repentance today. So, everybody, thank you, and we will continue this walk through Holy Week throughout each day of this week, so you can stay tuned for these videos. Thanks so much for joining us.